advancement of technology began with the use of natural resources as simple tools. For example, 300,000 years ago, Neanderthals learned how to use fire for their benefit and create tools from bone for hunting. Since then, we've obviously come a long way, from discovering fire for survival to traveling into outer space for exploration. Not just that, but technology has come to impact our everyday lives. Instead of traveling for weeks upon weeks, we can fly to the other side of the country in less than 5 hours. Instead of waiting for weeks or months for a letter in the mail, we can send an email or text in literally a second. Instead of going to the library to look up information, we can do research from our computers, our tablets, or our phones from anywhere. Instead of reading the newspaper days after news events happen, we can get minute-by-minute updates on the TV or on our phones. Instead of running to someone's house to use their phone if they had one for an accident, and waiting for an operator to connect you with the police, we can call 911 from the scene of an accident and have help there in minutes. All of these technology advances and more have affected the way humans live through each decade. We will explain to you about the history of some of our more common inventions and also about the impact they have had on society.
Technology has affected our lives in more ways than one. Does anyone know how technology came about first? It was transportation, of course. In 3500 BC, fixed wheels on carts were used to carry around people and goods for in-town travel. River boats were invented, which are ships with oars, to travel across rivers to carry passengers and ships across water. 2000 BC, horses were domesticated to pull wagons and use faster, more efficient travel on land. In 1620, Cornelius Drebbel created the first submarine, which was the first submergible ship to travel around in water. In 1769, Nicholas Joseph Carrot invented the self-propelled road vehicle. This evolved into the car, drastically changing transportation for the rest of time. In 1783, Montgolfier brothers created a hot air balloon, the first form of air travel. In 1790, the first modern bicycle was created for in-town and short-distance travel, faster than walking, of course. In 1801, Richard Trevithick invented the first steam locomotive, which was the beginning of the railroad industry. It was used for transportation of just mainly goods because they were small, so people couldn't fit on them. Robert Fulton created the first successful steamboat. This increased travel time from the river boats drastically. In 1862, Jean Moore designed gasoline engine automobiles. This was the first form of the actual car. In 1867, the first motorcycle was created by Gottlieb Daimler and Willem Maybach. In 1885, Carl Friedrich Benz created the first cars starting at three-wheeled vehicles with gasoline engines. In 1903, the Wright brothers created the first engine airplane, much faster air travel than the air balloon. In 1908, Henry Ford created the first assembly line for automobile manufacturing, producing multiple automobiles at one time by machine rather than one car at a time per several workers. In 1940, the helicopter was created by Igor Sikorsky and Paul Cornu. This evolved the final form of air travel. So from little wagons to cars to air travel and water travel, we have come a long way from transportation. But as transportation started to evolve, a new invention came about, and they called it the computer.
first use of the word computer was in 1613, from an English writer to a person who carried out technological experiments and advancements as he recorded them in books. His name was Richard Braithwaite. He was a person who carried out calculations or computations, and that's what he referred to in 1613 to a computer. From there we go to Charles Babbage, and he was the English mechanical engineer and politician. He designed the first programmable computer, and he was known as the father of the computer. In 1833, he designed an analytical engine because he couldn't really design with the tools that he had at that age and era. Since it was 1833, he didn't really have that many tools to design the programmable computer that he wanted to design. So this is why they call him the father of the computer, because he was so advanced and he really didn't live in an era where technology was up to his standards. So another reason he was named the father of the computer was because there weren't many advancements from 1833 to the 1940s. So from there on, we jump to the 1940s and the progression of hardware. We start with, in the 1950s, with vacuum tubes. And vacuum tubes are 1 bit, and they're the size of a thumb. And then we go from the vacuum tubes to the transistors. And those are 1 bit on the size of a fingernail. And those are during the 1950s and 1960s. From there, we go to the integrated circuits. And those are from the 1960s to the 1970s. Those are thousands of bits on the size of a hand. And in the 1970s, we evolved to the silicon computer chips, which we use today. It could be said that it really didn't advance from the 1970s to today, but really, where it went in advancement, it was from thousands to a couple thousand bits on one hand and silicon chips to millions of bits today on a fingernail. Then we go to the ease of use of computers. So in the 1950s, it was basically impossible to use a computer except for a really patient genius, due to the fact that really they had vacuum tubes and those things had 1 bit on the size of a thumb, which made for computers to be extremely big. Also, in the 1960s to the 1970s, they were only able to be used by programmable engineers and highly trained people, due to the fact that there wasn't much education towards computers and being able to use a computer. Also, they were very costly and not many people were able to access them. After the 1970s, where silicon computer chips were introduced, they were usable by just about anyone to today, which they're accessed anywhere, classrooms, libraries, everywhere. Then we go to the computer revolution of the 1950s. The vacuum tube, as I said, started in the 1950s, and this is what really took off with the computer revolution. The vacuum tube, it controlled electrons, and what it did is it would move electrons, so that would move the bits. You would see about 18,000 vacuum tubes for one computer in this era, but the vacuum tube also presented problems. These problems were that it required a lot of space, since it was just 1 bit on the size of a thumb, and just imagine how many bits you need for a computer to really be used. So they used about 18,000. That required a ton of space, and they also needed to be replaced every certain amount of time. So then came the transistor. The transistor promised to solve all of these problems that the vacuum tube presented. But it also had problems itself. The transistors needed to be put together, so that made for faulty wiring, and every time one transistor was put together in a circuit board, it would make for, if it was faulty wired, it would make for the whole circuit board not being able to be used, and also cost a lot of money to be used. As well, in the computer revolution, the problems were solved. This man you should know, Jack Sinclair Kilby. If you look at the back of your calculators or on some computers, Texas Instruments, that's what you see. This man, Jackson Kilby, was from Texas Instruments. He really paved the way for computers and the ease of computers to be used, and also the speed of them. Your calculators today are incredibly fast, and they can do mainly anything. They can graph. He introduced the first integrated chip circuit. So what this did was it really made for the evolution of transistors and vacuum tubes to be eliminated. So they really didn't have to be put together anymore. They could just be put on this board, or the chip and the circuit would be put on this board, and this would make for safe space, no need for vacuum tubes, which are 18,000 for a computer. You would just need this chip, and they would also improve with speed. This had so many more bits than 18,000. And then it also diminished malfunctions due to the fact that transistors didn't need to be put together anymore. So then we go to the social effects of the computer. And to start with the positives, the computer is really convenient to everyone. It's everywhere. It's in classrooms and it's in libraries. Like I said, you can find it everywhere. It's even on your phone as a computer. There's also the ability to create and collect data exponentially. And that could be anywhere from just you putting your own thoughts on a blog, or you downloading any sort of file, or going on Netflix. You can access information. And also, this improves the access of information. You wouldn't have to use an encyclopedia to look something up. You would just use your computer and go on the internet. But that also brought many negatives. So we go to the age of the internet. This created the ability for reproducibility. Everyone knows today reproducibility is a huge thing. The reproduction of illegal content that goes from music, television, movies, anything you can think of, you can probably find illegally on the internet. And that creates a very big negative for the internet era. There's also lack of accountability. Like I said earlier, you can really put whatever information you want on the internet. For example, Wikipedia. It also creates for lack of accountability, like I said. Not many really sources you can find on there. So then we go to spatiality. That involves a very controversial topic that we know today as privacy and the NSA. It could be from protecting the country to also invading on your civil liberties. And then we go to the last negative, and that's the illusion of precision. The computer, it really makes you think. It's always right. A calculator can't go wrong, right? Your computer can't go wrong. Wikipedia is always right. Well, really it doesn't. It doesn't always give you the impression that everything is right. Or it does give you the impression that everything is right, yet it's not. Anyways, much like the social effect of computers, the television also served as an impactful aspect of technologies to society.
The television has affected society for many years. One important event in television history was the election of 1960 between JFK and Richard Nixon, and the disagreement between the people who saw the debate on TV and those who heard it on the radio. What happened was both candidates were offered to wear makeup. This was one of the first televised debates in America, and Richard Nixon did not agree to it because he thought it wasn't manly enough. But JFK, he did wear makeup, and people who saw the debate on TV thought that JFK did better because he looked cool and confident. And they thought that Richard Nixon looked sickly and sweaty. But the people who heard it on the radio thought that Richard Nixon did better. Another important event in television history was the 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing. This was the first mission that sent men to the moon, and it was televised live on TV, and many, many people watched it. The first television was created in 1927 by a guy named Philo Farnsworth, but televisions weren't common in average American households until after World War II because it was pretty much a toy for the rich. But around 10 years after World War II, 2/3 of American households had a television set. This is because of the economic boom after World War II. Televisions replaced the radio in many American homes as the main source of entertainment, and the first modern color TVs were introduced to America in 1950 but did not start selling until the mid-60s. Television has shaped modern society in many ways. People used to rely on newspapers for all of their news, but televisions provided this news readily available. Television has also affected politics over the years. In the 1950s, political campaign ads became popular on television, and the first president to be televised was Harry Truman. Today, television is the main source of entertainment in America, and approximately 114,200,000 American households have at least one television set. Another technological advancement that changed America and the world is the telephone.
The mobile phone hasn't only made an impact on our society, it's made a crater. Motorola were the first to act on the idea of a mobile phone. They had 6 weeks to create a working prototype once they came up with the idea, and the first working prototype was finished in February of 1973. On September 21st, 1983, Motorola made history when the FCC approved the Dynatac 8000X, the world's first commercial portable phone. After more than 10 years and $1 million investment, the cell phone by Motorola produced an innovative technology that revolutionized the communications industry and changed the lives of people around the world. Consumer demand for the Dynatac 8000X was strong despite the only 30-minute talk time and the 10-hour charge time. The first text message was sent on December 3rd, 1992 by Neil Papworth from his personal computer to the personal phone of Richard Jarvis. The first text messaging service in the United States was provided in 1995 by American Personal Communications, the first GSM carrier in America. The number of text messages sent monthly in the U.S. exploded from 14 billion in 2000 to 188 billion in 2010. The concept of a smartphone was first used when the IBM Simon was produced in 1993. The IBM Simon was a mobile phone, pager, fax machine, and a PDA all rolled into one. It was first distributed in the United States between August of 1994 and February of 1995. In 2004, the most commonly known BlackBerry was released. The BlackBerry supported email, phone calls, text messaging, and the internet. In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone, one of the first cell phones to have a touchscreen that you didn't have to use a stylus or a keypad to use. It was the first smartphone of that time to have that. The first phone to use the Android operating system was the HTC Dream, and it was produced in 2008. The phenomenon of texting is beginning to worry physicians and psychologists who say it's leading to anxiety, distraction in school, falling grades, repetitive stress injury, and sleep deprivation. Some teenagers pretend that they're talking on the phone, or they mess with apps on their phone to prevent eye contact or other interactions at parties. In a survey made by Gazelle, more than 25% of the people involved said that they usually or almost always use their iPhone in a social setting or in a dinner party. 70% check their phones in the morning within just 1 hour of getting up. 56% check their phones before they go to bed. 48% check their phones over the weekend. 51% constantly check their phones during vacation. 44% reported that they would feel very anxious or irritable if they had to go a week without using their phone. Clothing and accessories have changed to make room for cell phones too. Pants now have pockets placed in them for you to store your phone in. Things like book bags, purses, and briefcases all have reserved spaces for you to put your phone in. And they also make wallets and smaller pouches for people to put their phones in. Mobile phones became so popular that they went straight to the big screen in Hollywood. When the cell phone was first used in movies, it was used to show a character's wealth because of how expensive they were at the time. But now they use them commonly for things like bomb detonators and GPS locators instead of just to make a simple phone call. Just like movies, television quickly started promoting mobile phones. They're found in many television shows, probably every show you watch. In Saved by the Bell, the Dynatec 8000X was used by Zach Morris. This show also presented the public downsides of mobile phones. Commercials have changed from the phone as well. They used to just have the phone in them, but now they're centered specifically around the cell phone and the carrier.
I can watch live TV on my new Sprint phone.
Well, my Sprint phone has TV and downloads music.
I can check email.
I have that. And crime deterrent.
What?
Try and take my wallet.
Give it.
Live TV, wireless music downloads, email, and crime deterrent.
I'm filing a grievance, Ben.
On the Sprint PowerVision.
Whether it's bidding on an item on eBay or checking your bank account balance, the impact that this technology is making on our lives is endless. It's hard to find something that the mobile phone hasn't changed.
To the evolution of transportation, computer science, television, and cell phones, we have a lot to attribute. Some philosophers have said that societies that are so dependent on technology are likely to become ever more technological at the cost of their freedom and psychological health. This we've seen in more government control, decreased security of personal information, less social interaction, decreased physical fitness, and less hands-on learning, among so many other consequences. However, many will argue that the advances in technology have been more beneficial than that. By enhancing our everyday life involving travel, communication, agriculture, science and engineering, medical, and the economy, we've come a long way to putting men on the moon and sending our spacecraft even farther. Who knows what kind of technology our generation will come up with next. Thank you.